Welcome to segment 8 of Plato is Still Relevant, an annotated summary of Plato's Republic. In segment 8, we're in book 4, and we're going to look at the following points. 1, we're going to do a quick review of what we've done so far. 2, we're going to see Adeimantus's argument toward Plato's lifestyle of the guardians. We're going to look what money, that is wealth and poverty, does to a city. We're going to look and discuss the notion that writing rules down and following laws just doesn't cut it. There's something else necessary to make for a just republic or a just city. We're going to look at what a real lawgiver, or how a real lawgiver achieves justice. And finally, we're going to look at the religion in our city, or the republic. So we're going to look at the lifestyle of the guardians, the economy, the laws, and finally, the religion. And we'll have our city. All right, are we there?
Yes.
Good. First of all, just a quick review. We are looking for what is justice. Now, the Greek word justice and our word justice are probably different. I'm going to get back to this in a minute. But, when we think justice, someone is murdered. The evidence points to person X. You go to court, and person X is free. And the family of the murdered person goes, justice wasn't served. But that's revenge. Socrates is after justice. I mean, really living justice. So, this is, we must keep in mind, because we can't have justice in our city unless it's in the souls of the individuals, hence the focus on education. Why did we go to a republic? The republic is large. The individual is small. We must find justice in the individuals, but individuals are too small and intricate. So we're building an entire city. And finally, the focus of education. On education, educated people are just people. Just people make for a just city. And finally, just please remember temperance. Temperance was the idea of balancing gymnastics, or that spirited, courageous part of the soul, with the poetic and beauty-loving and wisdom part of the soul. And temperance is when these, like a seesaw, instead of going up, down, just kind of stay steady. And these are generally what we've looked at so far. Now, at this point, Socrates, if you remember, at the end of segment 7, Socrates was saying our guardians will not own property, will not have money, will live in barracks. They will not have too little, nor will they have too much. And book 3 ended. Book 4 opens with Adeimantus saying, Socrates, these men will not be very happy. I mean, they'll be like mercenary soldiers. They guard the goods of the city, but they don't get any of the pleasures of the city. They won't have money to give to mistresses. They won't have money to buy stuff. Like the seemingly happy. Socrates says, Adeimantus, you don't get it. The happiness you are pinning on the guardians, or our eventual Philosopher-Kings, and by the way, Philosopher-King was not a term Plato used. It was applied to him by critics. But these Philosopher-Kings, we'll use the term, these Philosopher-Kings, if they love something besides internal justice, internal temperance, and don't put the city before everything else, then they're not Philosopher-Kings. If they want land ownership, then they're landowners. If they want money to buy mistresses, then they're womanizers. We don't want to pin a happiness on our guardians that would make them something other than guardians. These guys have got to see the good of the city is most important. Vital. And again, it comes from character. Character comes from education. And look, Adeimantus, you're suggesting our kings should have wealth and other people should have poverty. Think about it a second. Look what wealth and poverty does to a city. Take our potters making pottery. Let's say, one of the potters wins the lotto. He wins $100 million. Do you think he'll remain a potter? No, he's going to quit making pots. Or let's go the other direction. What happens if the potter is poor? Then he buys cheap materials. His pots aren't as good. So wealth takes the potter from the wheel. Poverty makes for a bad potter. And then here's the big point. Let me illustrate it with a personal antidote. I was in New York City years and years ago, and I was staying at a hotel in catty-corner across from the Waldorf Astoria in New York, where the President of the United States happened to be staying. And I came out of the hotel and was standing on the corner, and the President and all these guys in these beautiful Armani suits in limousines, and the President in a limousine go by, and I just thought, wow, there's the top end. And of course we all know the President's hardly the top wealthy end in our country, but I'm looking at the top end of our society. Then I walk up the road a bit, and behind the Waldorf is a poor, sad bum going number 2 behind the Waldorf Astoria. As Socrates said, 380 BC, when you have wealth and poverty in a city, you turn one city or one country into 2. The country for the wealthy and the country for the poor. We have people that don't have enough to eat, and we have people that can have lunch in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and dinner in New York City and think nothing about flying there on their private jet. Wealth and poverty, we don't want it in our republic because we want our city to be one city, like a beehive or an ant colony, and every member, every ant, every bee doing the function they do best and love to do, and doing it not for their personal, but for the good of the whole city. This is why it's so important each person does everything they're naturally fit to do. So we've got to keep everything trivial except for the one big thing: education. Education and upbringing. That's what makes laws work. That's what makes a city work. This week, I got a chief of a village from Kenya came, and I happened to hear him speak. Matter of fact, see, I bought some beads. But this chief, they asked him, they said, if you could have anything in the world you wanted, what would you want? And he said, education for my children. What keeps you living? We asked this chief. And he said a word in his language, and we asked him to translate, and he said it was very hard. He said, well, maybe it means positive heart. It also means good living. The there's a word in Greek, eudaimonia, good spirits. I think the word in Greek, dike, for justice, has more of this sense of literally being well-being. And this is what Socrates is trying to achieve. And it's kind of amazing how much this Kenyan village is like the republic Plato was laying out. It was actually kind of fun for me to hear my students say, God, as I listened to that chief, it reminded me exactly of Plato's republic. I mean, it's still out there. Talk about still relevant. Go to that Kenyan village. So, well, anyway, Socrates goes on, once we get this perfect harmony, this temperance between poetry and gymnastics, we've got to prevent any kind of innovation in gymnastics and poetry. We got to keep the established order. No new forms of songs. He goes, please realize you can't change the ways of music without changing the ways of people. When you change the ways of people, you change the ways of government. We can talk about the Beatles revolution, or we can talk about rap music. Either way, you're changing the ways of people, and it will change how we govern ourselves. So we want to avoid, if we put together a perfect city, we want to avoid any kind of innovation. And we've got to watch how our children play. If the play becomes unlawful, so becomes the child. I mean, all these things in education are so important. Wayward play leads to a wayward child. Seems like a no-brainer. Then he says something really, I think, very important. Writing laws down and then enforcing written laws, it just will not make for a just city. I mean, you know, people wiggle around rules and regulations. You know, people teach. Everybody teaches the way they see fit. Or you can work for a school district that says, do it this way. And here are the rules, and if you don't follow the rules, you don't get this many points, you don't get a raise. Well, then everybody's conforming and nobody's being real. Or you can sell pots and pans. And you can relate with people honestly and tell them you believe in the product, prove you believe in the product, and say that they'd be better off buying it. Or you can follow a script given by the company. This is, you know, this idea of writing laws down and following them, Socrates saw was empty, hollow. What we got to do is educate the kids in such a way that they follow. You know, this writing rules down, people just forever fight and fight and fight, rewriting the petty regulations. Kind of like a self-indulgent man going to the doctor for medicine and trying to get medicine to fix this or fix that, when really he just needs to change and live a decent lifestyle. We don't like self-indulgent people. What about a city that's like that? How about a city where the leaders pamper the citizens, you know, by anticipating what they want? Oh, I'm not going to give you any new taxes, and I'm going to make sure everybody gets a free lunch or whatever. They anticipate the city's wants and give it to them. I mean, if we don't like self-indulgent people, we wouldn't like a leader who begs for the people to follow him and does what they want. I mean, and then the people say, oh, what a great leader. What kind of city is this? And the people who serve cities like that, have you ever noticed how willing they are to go about pleasing each other? Oh, do I please you? Do I please you? And then they're constantly, once again, in a city like this where the people make the rules, they're tinkering with the trivia, tinkering with the laws, all the time without knowing they're trying to cut off a hydra's head. You know, you cut off the head of the hydra and two more speak out. You put down one law. It's my understanding that tax laws change every year. You cut off one way, two more ways to break it, split off, boom, two more. Now you got 6 problems. These people don't get that. A real lawgiver in a poorly governed city that is a self-indulgent city, not a city where the people put the city first, but a city where people put themselves first. In a self-indulgent city, making laws doesn't do any good. In a city full of good, well-adjusted, temperate people, you don't need laws. So there's our laws, there's our economy. Now what about religion? Socrates said we'll just stick with the ancient thing. Apollo's the god. All people came out of the navel of the earth, either golden-souled, silver-souled, bronze-souled, or iron-souled, and then they work according to their soul's nature. And God's arranged the city like they arranged a beehive or an anthill. I don't know if you've been in the Southwest, but if you see the Indians of the Southwest, the Pueblo Indians, they all have these kivas. And the religious services were in the kivas, and then they'd come up out of the kivas. They believed, though they had no contact with the Greeks, though the Greeks had no contact with the Kenyan village I was just barely introduced to the other day, yet all three have something in common. The people have got to be just and live a just life. And here are two religions where the people come from the navel of the earth. I don't know. Is there a form of human that's universal? So now we've got our education. Everyone's got to find and do their natural job. We've got our laws, which come from a proper education. We see our religion. Okay, says Socrates, where's justice? What's justice? In our next segment, segment 9, which is not even halfway through the book, well, it's about halfway, end of book 4, where we'll end next week, Socrates will give us his definition of justice. Please remember to make Socrates part of your everyday life. Thank you.